Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church in Seattle, Washington. It's Sunday, May 9th, 2021, and my name is John Luopa. I'm the senior minister here, and I'm joined this morning by my good colleague Beth Chronister and Roberta Ray, who will be presenting the main part of our service today, and of course Dwight Beckmeyer, guest musicians, and our tech crew. May looks like it's going to be a very busy month for us. If you've been reading the newsletter or checking the website or the screen announcements here on Sunday, many opportunities for us to hear what's on your mind. Both for the Sound Alliance, you'll hear a little bit more about that later. The eighth principle, which we hope to add to our 7 principles in Unitarian Universalism, stewardship, listening circles as well, and numerous book groups. So I hope that you'll be able to take an opportunity as your schedule and your interests permit to participate in these important opportunities when we can both speak, but really importantly listen to ourselves and to each other. It is good to be together. Let us begin the service this morning with the ringing of the bell. Our call to worship this morning is words that were written by the Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich for all the mothers' blessing. For all the mothers and mother figures, the grandmothers, aunts, and extended family members who mother the soon-to-be mothers, the wish they were mothers, the never wanted to be mothers, the it's complicated mothers. The birth mothers, foster mothers, adoptive mothers, stepmothers, the used-to-be dad mothers, and more than mom mothers. The single mothers, separated mothers, stay-at-home mothers, unhoused mothers, the grieving mothers, and those who grieve for their mothers, and those whose grief is complex. For all the communities that mother, and for all who depend on the Great Mother, you are held and beloved. Amen. I invite you now to join me in singing the doxology and our opening hymn, Spirit of Life.
through every land, by every tongue.
It has long been our joyous custom here at University Unitarian Church to share our second Sunday plate with one of the social justice organizations in the community with whom we have partnered. And today we are delighted to introduce to you Green Buildings Now, which is an interfaith collaborative of many religious organizations in Seattle working toward a fossil-free Seattle. Their focus now is on a building in South Seattle that houses a number of community groups and wanting to help them become fossil-free and a totally green building. The video you are about to hear and see comes from them, and I encourage your generous support of this effort.
Good morning, friends at University Unitarian Church. I'm Linda Zog, and I bring greetings from my own congregation, Seattle First Baptist, and a new exciting project, Green Buildings Now. Green Buildings Now has created a fund to bring the benefits of clean energy to historically marginalized communities. This fund will do what community leaders on Beacon Hill have asked us to do: weatherize and replace polluting fossil fuel energy systems with clean electric systems. Think heat pumps on the 4 buildings of the Beacon Hill Resilience Hub, which is on the campus of Bethany United Church of Christ. These buildings are used by organizations led by people of color, and they serve low-income residents. Resilience Hub organizers, led by the environmental justice group Got Green, are committed to making the campus fossil fuel free within 3 years. We have pledged to help them raise money to make this happen, and that is where today's plate offering comes in. Members of your own UUC Climate Action Team, Sharon Victor, Nancy Moranville, Ben Pfeiffer, and Kelly Howard, have been a driving force on the leadership team for this project. Please support the team as it helps our siblings on Beacon Hill fight climate change and meet their own community's needs. I'd like to introduce Cindy Irvin, who will share about her experience with the project.
Hello, and greetings from Bet Olive Meditative Synagogue and the Green Buildings Now organizing team. Since tracking my own carbon footprint and facing the consequences of my lifestyle on the planet and other people, present and future, and since knowing that the people most affected by climate change and pollution are the least responsible, I've been seeking a way to try to make it better. Cities across the country are establishing resilience hubs to provide community centers and services for BIPOC and low-income families year-round, and to be a support during both personal and large-scale emergencies. We're all understanding that social justice, environmental justice, and justice for future generations are inextricably intertwined in one web. This hub includes preschools, nurturing roots, growing healthy organic food, a food bank, prison reform, anti-racism and refugee programs, and others. Although Green Buildings Now isn't shifting wealth in a major way, we do have an opportunity to take some of what we have and send it to where it justly belongs. Got Green and Nurturing Roots collaborated on an Earth Day work party. A few of us volunteered, and with their permission, here's a few quick pictures. So here's the church and a sign outside their church. Welcome. And this is the Got Green poster, rooted in community. Here's a couple of playgrounds looking out at the farm, another farm. And Naima Clark, the executive director of Nurturing Roots by their greenhouse. And there's Sharon Victor with Naima talking to me in the background. And there's us, Green Buildings Now. Please share whatever you feel like you can. Thank you.
Friends, let me thank you for your generous support of this worthwhile project in advance. And now join me in saying the words as we receive the morning offering. This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources, and its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it. I invite you now, friends, to join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation as we take a moment to quiet ourselves and center ourselves, seeking that which renews us as persons and as a people. May we grow in gratitude for this mysterious gift of life, for all its songs and skirmishes, its love-making and haste-stopping beauty, its tender mercies, its honest dialogues, its stitching together acts of compassion, its small celebrations and broad visions, its simple tastes of bread, of costly friendships, and for the turn of words that unlock minds and move hearts, for kindnesses and chuckles, and for the forthrightness of children, who enlarge our sense of what is possible at all. We ask in this moment of prayer that our caring become wise and our support honest, our concerns thoughtful, and our loves as well as our fears accurate, and our spirits so open to suggestion that we will become surprisingly faithfully daring, expectantly patient, responsibly hopeful with each other and with ourselves, and with that or whom births, nurtures, and sustains us all the days and nights of our lives. To these imperfect words and ill-shaped thoughts, we add the silent intentions of our hearts and our minds. So may it be. Amen.
It was early in the morning when I left for Tacoma. A call from a UU colleague had gone out days before, asking if someone would be able to accompany a member of their community to his immigration hearing at the Northwest Detention Center. Things had changed quickly in those few days. The young man had been violently attacked within the Northwest Detention Center, hospitalized, and released. And so we first met, not in a courtroom within the white walls and razor wire of the detention center, but on the porch of a nonprofit respite house for newly released immigrants. I would come to find out that he was an asylum seeker from Central America, fleeing violence that was targeting him for being a gay man. He told me how his partner had been killed before they were able to reach the United States. A UU church in a nearby state was supporting him through the asylum process. He had been there just a few months, where he was hosted by a family within the congregation. And so it had been a huge shock a week before, when Immigration Customs and Enforcement, or ICE, banged on the door of his host family's home and arrested him, a refugee, during dinner. In near silence, we traveled together to the Northwest Detention Center, unsure of what his release the night before might mean for his immigration hearing that morning. And as we entered, I remember his hands shaking. The trauma of the place still alive in his body. I realized that though I had been outside the Northwest Detention Center a number of times for vigils and protest, this actually was my first time entering into the prison. And while we entered side by side, my race, citizenship status, first language, and my clergy collar all were cloaking me in privilege and keeping me at a distance from the threats of random arrest, detention, and deportation. And at the same time, as we entered into this immigrant prison, I realized that my existence was not separate from that place. I was connected not only because my elected government had invented this system and was funding it with taxpayer dollars, but I was connected because the threat of detention and deportation harms people I love. Harms people I love, and I believe this system makes all of us less free. Blessedly, we soon found out that his release meant that his court date was suspended. We rushed out of there, and as we were crossing the parking lot, we encountered a lesbian guard who he had connected with while in detention. She told him to stay strong, stay proud. The day opened before him. He was released from detention in the fear of immediate deportation back to a country where his life was endangered. We went out to brunch. We ate enormous pancakes and got to know one another now that the crisis had abated. We spent the whole day together until he could fly home to his host family and to his community that was waiting there to receive him. And asking him if I could share this story, it was really beautiful to reconnect. This was just a little over a year ago, just before the pandemic, and to hear that he is doing well. He is healthy and well and happy in his community. Within the immigrant justice team at UUC, we ground our actions in the spiritual practice of accompaniment. This means we are committed to following the voices of the people most impacted by the systems of oppression. We focus on building authentic, covenantal relationships with immigrants, with their families, and to follow the lead of immigrant-led organizations such as WISN or the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network and La Resistencia, that has been working hard for many years to shut down the Northwest Detention Center. As a team, the Immigrant Justice Team, we are always learning more about what accompaniment actually means, sharing our missteps, the learning curves, the discoveries, and remembering to pause to reflect on what we have received more than what we have given. The Latin roots of accompany are to be together, com, and eating bread, panis, face to face. Accompaniment means being together and eating bread face to face. To approach justice work through the lens of accompaniment is to remember that the liberation of everyone and everything is inherently connected, and that together we are on a journey toward it. As a privileged person, as privileged people, it also means unlearning patterns of dominance, such as taking charge, leading, or coming in with the answers. It means asking and listening, less talking. But also it means to move beyond asking into acting, so that together with our justice partners, with our new community members and friends, we might disrupt systems of oppression and plant the seeds of collective liberation. This way of doing justice work, of accompaniment, rooted in relationship and solidarity, has grown my heart and matured my spirit many times over. It has transformed me on an embodied level, I would say on a cellular level. For when I have become proximate, as Brian Stevenson talks about, when I've become proximate with another suffering under systems of oppression, it has broken through the walls of numbness and disassociation taught to me by my culture. In those moments, in those relationships, I can no longer believe in the myth of my separation, or that injustice is something that happens over there. When I have entered into real relationships with people most impacted and have truly heard their stories, my understandings of immigration has moved from here to here, into my body, where I may feel the grief, the ache, and where I may join that grief to the collective grief of family separation. It has moved my understandings into my body, where I can feel my love for justice and feel how it compels me toward communities and actions of love and justice. Accompaniment is an embodied response to both injustice and interdependence. Roberta and I have compiled images of immigrant justice movement work, both at the Northwest Detention Center and through the sanctuary movement. As you receive these images and listen to the music, my invitation to you is to listen to your own body, to your emotions, and just feel whatever sensations arise. There's no need to judge. Just notice what your body and what your emotions are speaking. For your body and your heart is the place of connection to all that is around you. I offer you these images of immigrant justice movement work.
Thank you, Dwight. There is more love somewhere. Good morning. I am truly grateful for Reverend Beth's invitation to share in this worship service today. And I want to invite you to reflect with me on some of our congregation's past history, our present, and some vision for the future. It is so strange to be in this chapel with no one, and so my heart is reaching out to all of you who are watching, and I also am reminding myself to trust my own voice, knowing that my lips have been touched by God or by Spirit. 36 years ago, this July 4th, UUC hosted a significant event in our church history, the welcoming of refugees from Central America into our church and 2 other churches in Seattle. I was part of the group that traveled by car caravan from Los Angeles to Seattle, accompanying the people who were to live in the sacred sanctuary spaces in our city. I had never been a part of anything like this, but when asked if I could go, I could not ignore the inner voice that told me that this was something that I needed to do. Pretty much since that time, I have always lived in what some call a mixed status household that includes members with varying immigration statuses: undocumented, resident, citizen. Some at UUC may know or remember that my partner was detained by immigration. Few will know that a nephew was also detained and taken to the Northwest Detention Center by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. I have been witness to their stories of how they were treated and the humiliation that they felt, and this church community has stood with them and others in similar circumstances, as Reverend Beth has shared. The Northwest Detention Center, recently renamed the Northwest ICE Processing Center, is a privately owned and operated detention center located on the tide flats of the Port of Tacoma. It was constructed in 2004 at a capacity of 500 persons, and it has expanded several times since, with a current capacity of 1,575, making it one of the largest detention centers in the United States. It sits on a toxic, polluted site where a meatpacking company once existed and is on the ancestral lands of the Puyallup people. Prior to its construction, at most 200 people were held in the old immigration building on Airport Way, but laws passed in 1996 put the search for expanded detention space by private corporations into motion. There is a growing movement with significant and important leadership by people who are or have been formerly detained that has expanded our understanding that immigration detention, private or not, is unnecessary and harmful. And powerful for me was that UUC joined the call to close the Northwest Detention Center, which will close in 2025 when the current contract ends as a result of a bill passed this legislative session that bans private prisons in Washington state. And has, as Reverend Beth mentioned, this has been years of organizing work. Make no mistake, though, our community partners in this effort are very clear that immigration detention as a whole is unnecessary. It deprives people of their liberty, separates them from their loved ones, and excludes them from community and the resources that they need. This is true for people who have lived in our community for decades and those who have recently been displaced, coming here to look for safety and security. As Unitarian Universalists, this denial of wholeness goes against our deepest values of the inherent worth and dignity of all, interconnectedness and interdependence. I want to return to my own story for a bit. I mentioned that I have been a witness to the suffering of those who've been deeply impacted by our immigration system, including my own family, Armando, Melvin, Gabrielle, but I have rarely been witness to my own story and the trauma that is in my body as someone who has experienced the threat of family separation. I am a white-bodied person born into middle-class wealth and advantage. The culture in which I have lived all my life tells me every day that I deserve to thrive, that I am exceptional, what my normal life should look like. And that same culture, I will name it as whiteness, beckons me to set aside and get over my experiences of threatened family separation by the state, to be in denial and pretend that it didn't happen to me, and that exclusion from community is not a continued present threat to my family and others who I care about. Or if I have chosen to look into this lived experience, then whiteness tells me that it was somehow deserved, because the culture in which I live supports a mythology that only some people are deserving of wholeness. That some brown bodies, some black bodies, some indigenous bodies are perhaps deserving, but only if they've been brought here as children, are grateful, have had no contact with our criminal justice system or our criminal injustice system, and if they are contributing to our economy. And the structures that we live in increasingly criminalize people's right to survival, right to thrive, and jeopardize our collective wellness. Our faith community's commitments to sanctuary and accompaniment tell my whole family and others in our community that they are seen. And in this community, we may be tempted to imagine that these problems exist outside of UUC, over there somewhere, but I want to say to all of you dear ones listening, if you have felt the threat of family separation in any way, I see you. If you have been displaced from your home, I see you. If you have been incarcerated or have loved ones who have been incarcerated, I see you. If privilege has told you or enabled you not to feel because you think it is not your problem, I see you. And if you need our UU faith to see you more fully, I see you too. Reverend Beth mentioned Brian Stevenson. And his urge to us to become proximate to suffering. And I quote him here. He says, quote, "Our brokenness is also the source of our common humanity, the basis for our shared search for comfort, meaning, and healing. Our shared vulnerability and imperfection nurtures and sustains our capacity for compassion." End quote. Recently, as part of strengthening my own understanding of my story and how trauma lives in the body, I have dived into a deep study of embodied social justice, and I have many teachers in this area. And I am exploring these questions. Where do we put our bodies? And how do we experience the connection of our bodies to other bodies? What do I feel when harm is being inflicted on others' bodies? What do I feel in my belly that tells me where I need to physically locate myself in order to be present with myself as well as others? What am I? What are we practicing? So will you take a breath with me? Many of the images that you saw of the Northwest Detention Center were taken near Mother's Day over a period of more than 10 years of public witness by faith communities in Oregon and Washington. Over time, the vigils at the detention center have grown to include many other solidarity days. At these events outside the razor wire double fence that surrounds the detention center, people of faith and goodwill, formerly detained, mothers and fathers of people detained, musicians, dancers, artists, and words from those who are detained inside have reclaimed this space with testimony, creativity, joy, and sorrow as an action of love and solidarity, committed to disrupting the status quo that cages people there. When my partner was detained, I was pregnant with our first child, and I was about 8 months pregnant when he had his asylum hearing. My leadership and participation in these vigil events has been a way to connect with a community that I know in my body I am part of, and it has been where I have needed to be every Saturday before Mother's Day for my own healing and to stand with other moms, fathers, and children there. A great teacher, Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, a Black woman Zen priest with whom some of you are familiar, has helped me explore that when I am connected to the center of my being and fully in my body, I know in my body that I cannot abide the violence and aggression being put on others. When I am in my body, I cannot decide someone's worth by what side of a border they live on or how they got to this one. I have felt this embodied connection when leading singing at the detention center and when singing with Jose in sanctuary at Gethsemane Lutheran just a few days before he prepared for the very real possibility of being detained, which he was. Singing Shoshana Jedwab's beautiful song based on the book of Ruth, I felt a shift in my body from simply singing with the assembled crowd in protest to making an oral commitment to live into daily practice the words of the song, "Where you go, I will go, beloved." But I will admit there are those times that we just don't know what to do, or we think we don't have time, and what do we do then? I would say return to your breath and your belly, the center of your being. Black womanist theologian Reverend Kelly Brown Douglas reminds us to return to our humanity and suggests that what guides us is that, quote, "we never withhold from another that which we would not want withheld from ourselves." A mentor of mine defines accompaniment as walking together in solidarity that practices interdependence and mutuality. Accompaniment is not passive. In covenant with each other, both inside and outside our faith community, accompaniment practices make time for us to share our stories, my story and your story that are linked together in a greater story. As spiritual practice, we give and receive the witness of persons who have not been allowed or who have been unable to tell their stories, understanding that all of our stories are told within a larger historical and cultural story. And we cannot do this work alone, as individuals or as a single institution. It must happen communally and intergenerationally. In relationship, in community, with an intentional commitment of attention and time to build all those involved. This relational work asks us to be open to our own transformation and the transformation of our institutions, and to build the strength and capacity to respond to asymmetries of power. Our faith community, UUC, has entered into a time of discernment and action about resource sharing, how we will be an anti-racist congregation, and how we join together with others in the wider community. I invite you to participate in the Sound Alliance listening sessions that begin on Tuesday evening, as well as the 8th principle listening circles that will happen next week, conversations with stewardship, and conversations with the board. Doing justice is within our reach. The world needs our commitment as people of faith and as Unitarian Universalists. So I return to the earlier question. What am I? What are we practicing? Will you take time to be present with your body, to discover the justice work that is calling to you and where you need to be? Will you join with me to sit with, work with, and organize with those who have been marginalized? Let us together practice love and solidarity, interdependence and liberation, and collective wellness. Amen.
Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you, Reverend Beth.
We close this morning with these words from the Reverend Tania Marquez. Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself, to be put into motion, to be stirred. No temas la agitación, puesto que es el ritmo de la vida misma, se puesto en movimiento incitarte.
Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. No temas los movimientos que descentran lo que creías permanente.
You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Llevas dentro el centro de tu entendimiento la brújula que te muestre el camino.
Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings, and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love. Lleva contigo el amor que te sostendrá, la visión que te guiará, las relaciones con todos los seres y el mundo que te pondrán los pies sobre la tierra. Ve en paz y con una suave agitación mueve a este mundo hacia el lado del amor.
Mm.